Good morning, everyone. If we could get everybody to take their seats. Wow. You guys listen really well. I appreciate that. Good morning. I want to welcome you to the 22nd Forum for Excellence Conference. Amazing that we've been doing this for 22 years through the Community College Board, and it's really exciting to be here with you today. If you don't know me, I'm Brian Durham, and I'm the Executive Director at the Community College Board. If you were bored and looked through my bio, you will see that I have been at the Community College Board for about 20 years. So this is probably my 18th, 19th, 20th or so Forum for Excellence, and so excited to look back and think about all the different things we've done at the forum and all the hard work that goes into this, and to welcome all of you again and to be a part of this event for so many years. It's really a premier event for the state and for the Community College Board. And really, it's awesome to be able to welcome you all here today. We're brought together virtually and in person, which of course reflects all the changes we've been through over the last 3.5 years or so, and we are back to, I venture to say, all the way back to normal. But we have learned from and added to the way we do things, and that's given us really an opportunity to expand the audience and provide folks that couldn't be here a way to come in virtually and see the opening, the keynote, the various sessions they might want to have. So really happy to be able to do that. And we've done this for the past 4 years, so specifically shouting out to those folks on virtual. I do want to acknowledge that this is Adult Education and Family Literacy Week, and thank our providers. And thank all of our providers, community colleges, community-based organizations, K-12 organizations, and such that do adult education. I do want you also to know that Governor Pritzker signed a proclamation recognizing this week, which can be found on the fabulous WOVA, is that how I say it? WOVA app. You can take a look at that proclamation there, but so excited. We highlighted some adult ed stuff at our recent board meeting, talked about it a little bit, and really excited to have the governor sign that proclamation, and thank you all for all the hard work you do in adult education. I do also want to acknowledge that, and I think that, and this is one of those things, that you don't often, I know you all are thinking about them all the time, but are things we have to do for the federal government, right? I want to acknowledge that we have been successful in meeting our federal performance targets. Colleges exceeded the state-determined performance levels for Perkins. Again this year, continuing to track upward on completion goals. And adult education providers exceeded all negotiated performance measures this year, a first since the pandemic. So really bouncing back here in that way. So I want you all to give yourselves a round of applause for that. This year's conference theme is Stronger Together, reflecting the state's commitment to fostering collaborative efforts between CTE and adult education. And the best way to serve our students is to work together. And while our vision for collaboration is much broader, one shared programmatic approach to serving students is through the implementation of ICAPS, or the Illinois Career and Academic Preparation System. And to continue to support the implementation of IETs, I want you to know we submitted and received approval for alternative ability to benefit state plan, allowing more flexible options for students to access federal aid or federal financial aid, and continue to support IETs through our innovative Bridge and Transition Grant, which is out now. So do take a look at that opportunity. Career and technical education and adult education remain instrumental in Illinois' workforce and educational efforts by ensuring all Illinois residents have access to high quality and affordable educational opportunities that lead to sustainable wages. CTE and adult ed are important levers for ensuring equitable access to learning opportunities, supporting local communities, fostering innovation, and promoting continuous improvement. The community college system boasts over 4,200 CTE certificates and degrees and provide meaningful dual credit opportunities to over 75,000 high school students, which is about 150,000 courses in our most current data. And as you know, adult ed, as I mentioned, is delivered by community colleges, community-based organizations, local education agencies, correctional entities, and faith-based organizations. And they provide adult ed services to over 52,000 adult learners last year, which has returned us to pre-pandemic enrollment. So we are back to those levels. So I think that deserves. In our commitment to equity, our adult ed providers remain nimble in providing rapid response to the thousands of immigrants, humanitarian parolees, and refugees entering Illinois as well. And we've seen a lot of that these last couple of years, and the adult education system has really stepped up to meet those needs. The state of Illinois is also committed to seeing the value in career and technical education and equity. Over the past couple of years, we've been able to release funding for healthcare programs, which is the PATH grant, as well as funding to support trades programs throughout the state, and our extremely successful Workforce Equity Initiative, which is in its 5th year. Later today, you're going to have an opportunity to hear from a student panel representing PATH, WEI, the Early Childhood Access for Consortium for Equity, IETs, and adult ed, elevating student voice. And I think a really key need we have is to continue to hear student voice. And we've been seeing more and more of these conversations across our various convenings, and I think that's fantastic. We're going to hone in a little bit on their experiences, hear from them, and hear what they need and what's critical to the success of programs straight from the students. I do want to make note that this is our first year in East Peoria, so I want to thank the hotel staff who are accommodating and feeding us during this conference. We especially want to thank the folks that are feeding us, right? So thank you to them. We are also joined, of course, by many ICCB staff members, and too numerous for me to call them out each individually by name, but I do want to ask all the ICCB folks in the audience to stand up, if you would. If you're on virtually, you can also stand, but we can't see you. All right. Thank you, and it's really a great opportunity for ICCB folks to be here and mingle with all of you and get to know you better. And nothing beats being able to do that in person in a face-to-face setting. I do want to thank also our sponsors, our gold sponsors, Burlington English, DRC TABE, Aztec, Essential Education, and GED Testing Services. And they're going to be out in the lobby, and you should certainly talk with them. And then our silver sponsors as well, HiSET, New Readiness Press, Reality Works, Scale It, and Transfer. So thank you to all the vendors. Please take the sponsors. So please take a chance to talk with them, learn about their products, hear what they have. They've been great partners, many of these folks over the years, and it's really fantastic to have an opportunity to talk to them. So please take that chance if you can. Lastly, putting on a hybrid conference takes significant work. So I do want to call out specifically a couple of folks here. I want to thank ICSPS under the direction of Dr. Amy Julian, and SIPDC led by Sarah Goldhammer, as well as the AV crews from Soundwork Productions and Vantage AV for their continued hard work and dedication to making the forum the premier professional development event of the year. So if I could have Sarah and her team, ICSPS and SIPDC stand up as well, and if we can give them a hand. So thank you so much for being here. I also have the great honor to introduce our keynote speaker for the day. Dave Inglis has spent his entire career helping leaders and companies to adapt and thrive through their most critical moments. Part strategist, storyteller, coach, and entrepreneur, his work focuses on how to build a winning strategy and leaning into the critical conversations to make it happen. His clients often refer to him as the corporate therapist with a gift to help others find their way forward and overcome the unseen obstacles. Dave founded the Digital Trade School, has taught entrepreneurship and innovation at universities and colleges across Canada. Yes, Canada. We brought him in from Canada, folks. And has been a trusted advisor to organizations such as the Royal Canadian Air Force, the Globe and Mail, as well as some of Canada's fastest growing startups. Today, he is here to go behind the scenes and teach us exactly what to ask students to continually evolve the student experience and build programs they love. So join me in welcoming Dave. And Dave, if you could come on up, we'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Morning, good morning. Thank you so much, Brian. Great to be here, and what a pleasure to be able to come all the way down from Canada to spend the morning with you here in East Peoria. I was here just in June earlier this year. I had a lovely invitation to come down and participate in a gathering that you had where you came together to celebrate some of the great apprenticeship programs that you run here in the state. And it was a really neat opportunity to meet so many of you. It was so great to see some familiar faces. And in that moment, in that time that I shared with you, it was so obvious that collaborating and working together to build a really student-centered approach to the way that you're building your programs is just who you are. It's how you work. And so when I was invited to come back to be able to spend the morning with you here today in the next hour, I was just delighted. And when I heard the theme for this conference is Better Together, I thought, gosh, these guys already have their shit together. Like, they actually do a really good job of this. So my job here, the way that I start to see it, is I'm going to help you just get a little bit better at having some really important conversations, because you're already pretty good at it, okay? Now, for those of you who don't know me, as Brian had alluded to, I'm up in Kitchener-Waterloo, which is just about an hour outside of Toronto. And I've had a pretty eclectic experience over the course of my professional career. I went to school to study kinesiology or sport medicine, and my first kind of foray into education was when I created my first company called the Concussion Toolbox. When I was 16, I broke my neck and my back unexpectedly playing hockey. I was paralyzed, needed to learn how to work again. I tried to go and play rugby at university. For any parents here who have children who experience that and want to go play rugby after, strongly discourage it. I learned pretty quickly that I need to shift gears. I couldn't necessarily start playing sports. I needed to get into research. And that led us to building this great company where education was a big part of the mandate that we had. Maybe some of you have children, if not yourself, who have experienced concussions. And so that is such a vital part of solving that problem, isn't it? I ended up selling that company, and then I got kind of pushed into this road of entrepreneurship, where I had the pleasure over the last 10 years learning from some of the best and the brightest around the world about this process of new venture creation, strategy, innovation, taking great companies and helping them look at their future horizons and uncover really meaningful opportunities to continue to get better, service their customers, service their students. And for me, I loved working with some of the best companies in Canada and North America and working with startups. But I'll tell you, working with post-secondary institutions was always something that I really loved, because it's really neat to be able to help a company, but what's really cool is to help somebody build their future, isn't it? And so that's where I ended up creating the Digital Trade School. And I hope today in our time together, I can start to share with you some really meaningful stories and experiences. And I want to get really practical with you, if that's okay, to talk to you about exactly what you should be asking your students, exactly what you should be saying in some of the conversations that you have, so you can continue to find opportunities to get better and better. Does that sound good? So when I was thinking about our time together today, and I was sitting down and trying to craft out the next hour or so that we have, I started to realize we had one or two ways that we could take this conversation. There's the front of the house. We can talk about the actual programs and products and the experiences that you build for your students. I can share with you the really successful ones that we've built, that we've delivered, and why they all work so well. But the reality is with such a great group here from across the state, there's so many different programs that you're running that if I was to share with you mine, there's probably a good risk that we're not going to be really connecting with each other. And I often say when we share our successes, while the intent might be really good to be able to share some lessons learned, more often than not, when we share our successes, all it actually does is create distance between us. And so I thought what might be really neat is instead of talking about the front of the house and the programs and the kind of the finished product, what if we talked about the back of the house today? What if we talked about all the conversations, the things that happen behind the scenes, the work before the work? Because that's something that we all share. As educators, as administrators, like that's your home turf. And the neat thing is if you get that part of your vocation right, just like a really beautiful restaurant, the people who are coming to be able to eat a wonderful meal with you, they should have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. When you get this part right, it creates a great foundation to build your programs on. And if you get it wrong, we can quietly sabotage your best time, your best energy. And so if it's okay with you, I'd like to go here today. I'd like to spend the next hour talking about the things behind the scenes. Because I think that's where each of you can hopefully walk away from our time together, getting a little bit better at these really critical conversations. These are the conversations that you're having with each other. So today, when I share some stories with you, it's not just going to be about talking with students. I also want to highlight some of the experiences that we've had, taking a very collaborative approach and working with different institutions and organizations just like you to work better together. It's these conversations where you're trying to adapt programs that you already run to make them a little bit better, to reflect the learning that you've had from delivering them in your communities. It's also where you come together with new mandates and new opportunities to build new programs. And then we're also going to be covering conversations with students, because let's not kid ourselves, building a program is one thing, but you got to fill a classroom, right? You got to have people in the room. At the end of the day, that's why you do what you do. And sometimes these conversations with students, it's about logistics. It's teaching them about the program itself and helping them really understand the opportunity that's in front of them. But you know what my experience is? The most important conversations with students sometimes is helping them build the self-belief that's required to step in. Am I right? And so that's what I really want to lean into with you today is these two different streams, if you will, these two different tracks of conversations, okay? So here's the deal. I'm committed over the next hour to bringing a ton of energy to share all the expertise that I have with you and to lay it all out on this floor with you. I'm ready to go. But the reality is it takes two to tango here. For you to be able to get the most out of the next hour together, you got to squeeze the lemon of the next 60 minutes. So if you're ready to put your phone down, to put your email away, to really get on the edge of your seat and use it as an opportunity for you to get a little bit better so you can go back to your vocation, your day-to-day life, and lead conversations more effectively, I want you really quickly with your partner at your table, just let them know you're ready to squeeze the lemons this morning, okay? Okay. Let's get going. Sounds like we're all ready to go. I love it. So I want you to take a moment, I want you to think about a historical situation that you've been in. A moment where you could have benefited from being a little bit more curious. A moment where maybe you moved a bit too quick. Intentions maybe were good, but you moved too quick. I want to share one with you. 2018, I was working in building Canada's largest corporate innovation center, which is just a really fancy way of saying we had a great group of people who were helping some of our biggest companies stay relevant. At that time, I was also sitting on the board for our small business center in our community. We have about 2,500 businesses in Kitchener and Waterloo who, unlike the proliferation of technology companies right now that are taking place in our community, these are the companies that are the backbone of our economy. These are the motorcycle dealerships, the construction companies, the real big employers, and all that new exciting stuff. And as we were sitting at the board table, I remember we had a report come across once where there was about 250 of these business owners who had come together to say, gosh, you guys are spending so much time and energy here in this community helping new companies start, grow, and succeed. Hello? We've been here for 50 years. E-commerce is impacting the way that we run our business. Our customers are demanding a digital-first experience, and there's no help to be found for us. And as somebody who is actively working with big companies to be able to help them thinking about their digital strategy and to become really intentional about that, I knew that we had some really great solutions and resources and answers to be able to help. And so I remember as soon as we got this report, I put my hand up in the meeting and I said, guys, don't worry about it. We've been working with big established companies for a while here. We have some great resources and executive training that we can bring into these businesses and help them solve this problem. So we immediately went back out to this community and we started to share with them that we had these great executive training programs. We could partner with the universities and the colleges to be able to run and offer them this learning experience. And so we thought we'd run a pilot. We thought, heck, let's see if of these 250 people, let's see if they'll put their money where their mouth is. If you say this is an issue and you're ready to actually step into it, let's run something for you. So about 60 days later, we started to put out into our community that we were going to run a digital transformation program for these business owners. We had 25 sign up within inside of 24 hours. They had all paid to be there. I remember about 30 days after that, me and my colleague Jeff had been filling up the room. Now, the coffee and the snacks were not nearly as good as what's out here today. But we got the room all set up. And 9 o'clock would start to come around. We would start to start. 5 people showed up. 6, 7 rolled in. We were now 1/4 past the hour. And the room was pretty much empty. So I remember looking over at Jeff and I was like, hey man, any chance we sent the wrong calendar invite on this one? Because this is kind of weird. Like, this is day 1 of this program. People have paid to be here. Why isn't the room full? So we delivered that first session, and I called out to a lot of the business owners who weren't there, and I said, hey, it's Dave here. We missed you. Where were you on Friday? We were really excited to start our journey and working together. And the excuses and the reasons that they had shared with us were very valid. I remember one particular business owner, I kid you not, like his pipes burst in the business that Friday morning, and he was stuck inside of his building trying to clean up that mess to make sure that it was set up so that customers and patrons could come through. And there was 2 or 3 or 4 others who weren't able to be there because as a business owner and operator, they had team members who were calling in sick or unable to come for certain reasons, and they had to be the ones who stepped in. They were the ones who were sitting at the till. They were the ones who were meeting with customers, taking transactions. Does this make sense? So it made a lot of sense that you weren't here. That makes sense. This was a challenge that they had. This was an opportunity where I could have been way more curious up front, and it bit me in the butt. We were so overzealous and excited to be able to share a program and resources that we were so confident would make an impact. In our role as being on this board, we were so committed to supporting these business owners that we wanted to move fast. We wanted to make sure we could give them what we had as quick as possible. What we failed to do was to slow down the conversation and to really meet them where they were at. To talk about the practical reality of what it would mean as a business owner and operator to step into a learning experience like this. Because when we worked with big corporate Canada, like the Royal Canadian Air Force, the Globe and Mail as an example, the people who were in our programs, they were paid as executives to work on the business. They didn't have to work in it at the same time. And so when they signed up for our programs and the initiatives that we were running, boy, they were there with bells on. That's not who we were working with here. So this is a great example from my experience where, boy, I could have really benefited, and so could have these business owners. They could have benefited from me being a little bit more curious up front and not moving so fast. We all have experiences like this, don't we? Show of hands if you've done this before in your own way, right? Good intention, moving quick as you can. But once you kind of move yourself down that road, you start to realize there were some important details that maybe you missed. Here's a bit of a teaching here for you, and I want you to have your notebooks out here today because there's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to be teaching you that you're going to want to write down. The mistake here that I made is that I was spending all my time giving context to these business owners. I know that you have these challenges. Here's what we do with corporate teams. Here's all the training that's going to be really helpful for you. If you enroll in it, we're going to help you get really clear on your strategy. We're going to help you identify the initiatives that are going to help you drive things forward, and you're going to be in a much better spot after all of this. Trust me. We were giving context, trying to reassure the people in our community that we had their backs. Good intention, but the reality is that as leaders, when we give context, we think it's helpful and it creates certainty, but the honest truth is it creates uncertainty. You've experienced this before. Somebody comes and tells you what you should be doing, and in the back of your mind, you're like, well, you really don't know me. And more often than not, the situation's kind of like these business owners. Instead of telling you that, They just nod their head along, and then you realize later on that you missed the mark. So instead of giving context, what we really want to focus on as leaders who are, again, stewarding these important conversations is we want to create their context, don't we? Instead of giving them context, we want to ask them really thoughtful questions so that we can understand what their context is. Because when we understand what somebody else's context is, that's where we can start to cultivate certainty, the certainty that we need as educators and as administrators to build great programs that really align with the barriers that our students have and the appetite that they have to get involved. There's a principle when it comes to conversational excellence I want you to write down here. The worst time to think about what you're trying to say is when you're trying to say it. Isn't that true? Think of that one with your kids. The worst time you're trying to think about what you're trying to say is in the moment that you're trying to say it. Even to this day, as I tell you this story, I'm sitting here and there's a small little voice in my head saying, shit, you could have done way better. Why didn't you ask those questions? Show of hands, if you spend a lot of time after conversations that you have wishing that you would have said things a little bit differently. Am I right? So here's a big idea. Instead of spending that 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe even much longer after the conversation, after today, let's commit together to actually putting that time up front. Putting that time up front so you can start to think about the day ahead of you, the week ahead of you. What are those critical conversations? The conversations where your ability to show up effectively is going to make a big difference. And then think about exactly what we want to say in those moments. Think about it before we get there instead of thinking about it afterwards. But the reality is all of us here in this room, the 200 or 300 of us that are here, I don't know, Brian, if you have a time machine out back that we can all jump into, but I haven't found one yet. We're not going to go back in time into conversations that you've had in the past to fix them. That's behind us. What we're doing now is talking about how can we leave this room and make sure that we're having better conversations tomorrow, later this week, later this month. So to be able to really anchor ourselves into our time together, it's really important that you create your context. So I want you to take a moment with your partner at your table here, and it can be on your left or your right. I'm going to give you 30 or 60 seconds. And I want you to identify a conversation that you're having later this week. A conversation where it's pretty important to you. And it might be with your family. It might be with a student. It might be with some of the partners that you're working with. But who are you speaking later to this week? Somebody that today, as you're learning the things that I'm going to teach you, all the notes that you're taking down, you can make sure that you're going to take those notes and you're going to review them again before you sit down with that person later this week. You're going to sit down and be intentional about thinking about what you want to say before you say it. Because if you don't have context coming into this, the content I'm going to give you is just going to be a whole bunch of noise. Content in the absence of context is just noise. And if you want content, you can hang out at home, throw on your sweatpants, watch some of this on YouTube and Netflix. If you want to squeeze the lemon today, I want you to get really clear on who matters this week. What are the 1 or 2 conversations that you're going to be a little bit more intentional about, okay? 30, 60 seconds, over to you, please, with your neighbors. Who are you chatting with later this week? How you doing? So who are you chatting with? Who are you chatting with later this week? Okay, great. We'll write that one down, and then you can even take a look at your calendar, right? Okay. Let's come on back together here. Well done. Show of hands, who has a conversation later this week or early next week that they've been able to pinpoint here? Show of hands. I want to make sure everybody's got something. Because again, you said you wanted to squeeze a lemon today. So again, just one of these conversations. That way you have something to apply this to, okay? So what I'd like to do here over the course of the remainder of our time together, I'm going to share some real stories with you. A few good ones, a few embarrassing ones. And as we go through those, I'm going to have little pit stops along the way, and I want to share with you 6 or 7 questions that you can be asking that are going to improve the quality of your conversations. Phrases that you can use in these important dialogues that are going to help you get a little bit better, okay? So let's go back to the story I gave with you here when we were trying to serve and support these business owners. Just because the pilot that we ran flopped didn't mean the problem still wasn't worth solving. We knew that they really were the primary beneficiaries of this work. They were the ones who were carrying the bag on this problem. But we also realized through conversations with these business owners that the reality of being an operator and an owner is that it was going to be really, really, really tough for them to be doing the work. And it kept coming up in our conversations, like, what about students? Any chance we can hire some students to do some of this for us? Again, like setting up e-commerce sites or installing a CRM so they could do email marketing, or even getting better at project management and using some of the tools that we all maybe take for granted in some of our work that are sometimes missing in some of these companies. What about students? What role could they play? And we also realized that students, as we started to talk about this as a board, we also have a challenge when it comes to our students finding employment. That's a big challenge for us in Canada, is underemployment. You got great, talented people that are going to school for 4 or 5 years, and they walk out and they're working at Starbucks. They aren't able to actually use the gifts and the talents that they've built, and they find themselves scratching their heads saying, why am I here? I thought I invested all this time and energy to have a better job than this. And so when we started to look at this opportunity in engaging students in this, the person we knew we had to reach out to was Dr. Bruce Arai. Dr. Bruce Arai at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, where I live, he's a dean at the time that oversaw this challenge of underemployment, that was responsible for that kind of final mile and making sure that our students who are coming through the business programs, our arts programs, our continuing education programs, our international students who were coming in, where ESL was a challenge for them and learning the language of English and docking into Canada, he was responsible for that outcome. And I had never met Bruce before. Never met him once, but I knew he was the right guy for us to go and talk to. So what did I do? I spun up a little email, like most of us do. And I thought, hey, you know what? Bruce is a pretty busy guy, but I'll shoot the dark. I'll see if he'll sit down with us and create an opportunity to be able to perhaps explore how we might work together. And so I running this email. Hey, Bruce. My name's Dave from Communitech. I'm not sure if it's for you, but we've uncovered a pretty big challenge in our business community that I think could create some really meaningful opportunities for students to find employment. Would you be game to sit down and have a bit of a chat about this? What is the number one reason why we don't ask for the things that we want? Fear. Fear of what? Fear of rejection, exactly. Fear of rejection. This was definitely sitting with me as I wrote it to Bruce. So when you're in moments, situational moments, where you want something, you want to reach out, but sometimes that fear gets in the way, I want to share with you a really important phrase here that you can use in your conversations that's going to significantly reduce the risk of rejection, increase the probability of a yes, and more importantly, temper your fear of rejection. And the phrase is quite simply this: I'm not sure if it's for you, but. I want you to write that one down. I'm not sure if it's for you, but. Go back to my email here. Well, where did it go? Right in the subject. That's how I opened it right up. So why does this work so well, Dave, right? Well, I'm not sure if it's for you. It works really well for a couple reasons. When you preface an opportunity with this statement, I'm not sure if it's for you, but, it immediately tells the person there's not really a ton of pressure here. I'm not trying to force anything down your throat. And show of hands if you get a flurry of invitations on LinkedIn where people are telling you all the time that they have the exact thing that you need. I don't know if you're like me, which is like, delete, delete, delete. When you use this as a preamble or a preface to some of your questions when you're reaching out to people and asking for things that you want, it's great because it creates intrigue. It creates some curiosity. Short and sweet email, but you can imagine what Bruce might have felt when that came across his desk. I wonder what Dave's working on. I wonder. And it signals, right, that there's no pressure here. Now, in the past, show of hands, if you've been taught not to use the word but in some of your conversations, performance reviews, right? I have a lot of fun experiences with this. I got home about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I remember I was chatting with my wife. I had gotten in from some travel. I said, how was the last week or so? How are the kids doing? She goes, it was really, really, really good, but, and of course, where do you focus all your energy? You know what's coming. All the things that I wasn't there to be able to help with, rightfully so. But we're trained sometimes not to use this word but because of the shit sandwich that sometimes we've been exposed to. You know what I mean? Like the nice stuff up front, give you the real feedback in the middle, and try and give you something nice on the other end. Here in this phrase, I'm not sure if it's for you, but we're actually using the word but very strategically. Because if you think about this word but, as soon as I say but, you forget everything that I said beforehand. When I come home and I was chatting with Jen, oh, it was a great week, but great week out the window. Totally forgot about that. Tell me what actually happened. We naturally, as humans, start to gravitate our attention towards everything after but. Am I right? So here, when you want to introduce something to somebody and increase your probability of them looking at it, I'm not sure if it's for you, but is a very strategic preface to the questions and opportunities you want to share with others because it gets them to look at the very thing you're trying to present to them. Does this make sense? Okay? So I'm not sure it's for you, but this is a really important phrase, one that you can start to use right away. And I'll tell you right now, when it comes to your subject lines and your email, try it. Works great. It's a great way to get people to open up and read the messages that you have. Okay, if we keep going here. So Bruce gets back to me within 30 minutes. And he says, Dave, happy to sit down. Can you come to my office the next day or two? So I went over to Bruce's office and we sat down and he goes, okay, lay it out to me, what's going on? I explained to him what we had learned at our small business community and the challenges that we were learning about and how they really felt underserved. I also had to swallow my pride a little bit and tell him about the real great failure that we had. Explain to him what we tried, what happened, what we learned. He says, okay, Dave, so what do you want to do? Why are you reaching out to me? I get the opportunity here with students to be able to solve this problem, but what's your idea? And at that particular moment, the idea that we had is we have a lot of great business students who go through 4 or 5 years of training and learning. Why don't we have an elective in that last year where they can do a capstone project working with these businesses? Whereas we teach them about the power and the value of e-commerce and some of these great tools that come from companies like Shopify or Lightspeed and others that make a big impact in these businesses, why don't we have an elective that they can go and enroll in and actually have an applied learning experience with some of these companies in our community? Immediately as I shared this with him, he's like, that'll never fly. That'll never fly. At that point in time, show of hands if you've been that before, you share a great idea and somebody just kind of shuts you down right away. I remember being in that moment, this was in the first 15 minutes, and I haven't even had 2 sips of my coffee at this stage in the game. It's we're done. So when you're in this type of a situation where you're trying to learn about where somebody's at, because again, I don't really know what Bruce's mandate is. I don't know how he sees this challenge. I don't know what responsibility he has to solve this or how he's even doing it. There's a really thoughtful question you can ask in these moments. Moments where you feel a little bit lost. Moments where you feel like you don't understand somebody's context. And the question is quite simply this: can you help me understand? So I said to Bruce, can you help me understand why you don't think this will work? And he explained 2 really simple things that really made it quite clear for me. He goes, firstly, our process academically here at Laurier, it's going to take you 18 to 24 months to bring up this idea with our faculty and to actually go through the process of creating a new elective. It's going to take a long time, longer than I know you want. These business owners don't have the luxury of waiting 24 months, do they? So if you want to go the undergrad route, you want to build an elective, good luck. It's going to take a long time. And he goes, the other reason why is we actually don't have a problem with employment for our business students. They have a wonderful co-op program and we have very, very high rates of employment. Your idea is wrong because you're targeting the wrong student here. The real student that you need to be focused on is the arts student. It's the one who doesn't have a co-op experience or an internship opportunity. Those are the ones who are being underemployed and are leaving school without the practical, hands-on, apprenticeship-style learning when they're sitting down with an employer that allows them to demonstrate with confidence that they have the experience and what it takes to make a difference. Enough for this employer to be able to trust them. So this is a really important question to ask, because again, I want to create his context, because when we do this, this is so effective because it makes my lack of understanding my fault. It's a really important dynamic in this conversation. I could have just walked away and said, okay, thanks so much for your time, Bruce. I guess we're kind of going back to square one here. Maybe we can't solve this problem. But when I made my lack of understanding my fault, Bruce became my teacher. And I'm sure you know people who in that moment would be trying to convince this person otherwise. And they spend a lot of time kind of me versus you. And when we ask a question like this, hey, can you help me understand? Immediately what it does is it makes a really subtle but important shift. It goes from me versus you to us versus it. This challenge of helping these business owners, this challenge of helping these students find meaningful opportunities to start their career. It creates their context. Because here's the second principle of conversational excellence I want to teach with you today. People do things for their reasons, not yours. Imagine that, right? But all too often, we sit down as partners and collaborators and different institutions coming together, as per your theme, better together. Sometimes when we do this and we meet with each other, we share our reasons. We give a ton of context instead of spending time asking questions to understand what are your reasons. By asking, can you help me understand and position yourself as the learner in these conversations that you're having? I'll share with you later, the person who's asking the questions is actually controlling the conversation. So while you might think you're the one who's at a disadvantage, you're actually learning a lot, and you're creating the intel and the understanding that's going to allow you to effectively position the idea that you have. More than if you went in and actually just started to give them context, okay? So people do things for their reasons, not yours. You have to understand what those reasons are. When you understand what those reasons are, when you get to the point in a conversation where you can say these words, based on the fact that you said. So with Bruce, based on the fact that you said undergraduate students in the arts program are underemployed, and based on the fact that you said that this is going to take us 24 months, now I'm playing back to him that I understand him. We have relatability. Now we're same team. Really, really important principle here. So I remember sitting down with Bruce at this stage of the game, and he started to teach us and help us understand why it wasn't going to work. But to me, it was still a puzzle. There wasn't a clear pathway forward. And I could tell in that moment as I was looking at Bruce and he was looking at me and Jeff to my right was looking at the two of us, both kind of doe-eyed, like where do we go from here? We have to remember that sometimes when it comes to leading and influencing really important conversations, the reason why people don't move forward is because of analysis paralysis. There's too many options, right? Especially when you're at this really fun conceptual stage, if you're trying to come up and brainstorm how you might work together. There's too many options. And so when you're in this position, there's a really great way you can lead in this moment. And it's by simplifying the amount of options that are there. You can use this phrase, well, you have 3 options. And when you present 3 different options to somebody, generally speaking, the way you want to do this is by first giving them an option that's the hard choice, the one with really questionable returns. So with Bruce, I said, okay, Bruce, so we got 3 options here. If I understand where we're at, first option is we can go down this undergraduate pathway. It's going to take 18 to 24 months. There's a shot that it might help, but it's going to be too long. It's going to take a long time. Another option, option 2 is we could just do absolutely nothing, because let's not forget, not doing something is still a choice. But then you also want to present this third option, the one that you see maybe is the right choice. Because again, when you're helping somebody make a decision, a lot of times when it comes to influence and leading of really important conversations, that's your job. Your job is to help people make the right decision. And again, we want to do it in a way where they feel like it is their decision, not one that you're pushing onto them. So this is a really effective way in those moments where you feel overwhelmed when things are really complex. Distill it down, make it simple. Identify what 2 or 3 really great choices are. So I said to Bruce, Bruce, option number 1, like I said, we can roll the dice on this 18 or 24-month process, start to chat with the business school, or maybe look at the arts department and build an undergraduate elective that they can start to enroll in. It's going to take a long time. We do nothing. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a third option. So I turned it over to Bruce. I said, so those are 2 pretty shitty options. What do you think the third one should be? And he looked at me and he goes, we need to build a graduate certificate. You need to work with the continuing education department. We can build something over there in less than 6 months. You need to chat with Kate, who at the time was the dean of our continuing education department at Laurier. So on I went, back in the car, wrote Kate an email. Bruce had connected us. And we had an opportunity in very short notice to be able to sit down and to share where we were at. Bruce came with us as well. We had shared the circumstance, shared the opportunity, and Kate got really excited about this. We had talked about the opportunity to create an applied learning experience. This is where the digital trade school concept came from. It was like, we don't need to learn about e-commerce in a textbook here. We need real-life experience. I want to build calluses on hands here, which is a bit of a joke when you're talking about digital tools, right? But I want to build calluses on hand. I want to have real-life experience here. Because at the end of the day, our success is not just having students find employment, it's also helping business owners become a digital-first company and to be more effective, more competitive. So she loved the opportunity of bringing in recent graduates and alumni to be able to take a graduate certificate like this. She saw the opportunity in working with business owners. Our approach was, instead of just hiring some of your existing faculty who have never actually worked in digital marketing before, why don't we go to agencies in the community and we'll pay some of their leaders and their executives to be coaches to these students? A lot of head nodding from Kate. She's like, yes, this sounds great, until I said to her, and you know what the best part is? We're actually going to get them to use real tools. We're going to work with Shopify, and they're going to give us access to some of their tools. And we're going to work with HubSpot. Show fans, if you know who HubSpot is, right? A CRM platform. Like, we're going to work with real providers and technology companies who have these tools. And that's where everything slowed right down to a grinding halt. She goes, Nope. We won't be doing that, Dave. I said, can you help me understand why? She goes, you have to understand our faculty inside the university, they have a big no-no when it comes to working with private industry. They do not want to support Microsoft. They do not want to support Salesforce. They do not want to support any single for-profit company. They want to be agnostic. So really it's sweet of you to see the opportunity to be able to bring in these tools, but it's just not going to fly with our faculty. Again, another roadblock. Another thing that came up and started to kind of create resistance here. So in this moment, I knew I needed to present a different pathway, a different opportunity. And when you're stuck in a situation like this, where somebody's at a maybe, because that's exactly where Kate was. She wasn't a no on this. She wasn't a hell yes. She was somewhere in that gray area of like, maybe, but this piece we got to figure out, right? So when you're in a position in some of your conversations with some of your contemporaries, your peers, or even students, and we're stuck at a maybe, this question, would it help if, is a great way to navigate that moment. Because for Kate in this moment, here was my response. And this is the moment that we decided to start the digital trade school. I said, Kate, would it help if I created my own institution to run this under? Instead of doing this inside of Laurier, what if we became partners and we created a separate institution to build and deliver these programs, and you could be the one who gave a certificate. You could be the one who helped us make sure there was really great integrity in the way that we were delivering this, and we could become the hub of the wheel and build an ecosystem of partners around this, and you could be one of those players. Would it help if we created our own institution? She'd never thought about that before, and this is the power of this question, my friends. It's a conditional offer that's almost impossible to refuse, but more importantly, what it does here, it creates a hypothetical reality that somebody probably hasn't considered. And as soon as we had that, I asked her that question. She goes, I don't know how this will fly, but that would definitely help. It would definitely help. And that's where the digital trade school started to come from. So it's really important to understand, in that moment, in that dynamic, again, you can imagine this. Young guy Dave in a room coming up with really cool, exciting ideas, but Kate's a bit of a gatekeeper here. Same with Bruce. And it's really easy to think that they're the ones who are in control of the conversation. They're the real decision makers. I just want to remind you, the person who asks the questions is the one who's in control of a conversation. So if you're the one being asked questions to all the time and you're on your heels, you're on defense. You're not in control. This is why it's really important for your most important conversations, the one you're going to have tomorrow or next week, is to think about the questions you want to be asking before you're in the moment with those people. And I want to be very, very clear. There is a malicious and a benevolent intent with this type of work that I'm sharing with you. I'm going to trust that everybody in this room, when it comes to influence here, your intention here is to work together to build great experiences that are in the best interest of your students. That's why you're doing what you're doing. It's not to pull a fast one on somebody, because I'll tell you what, if you want to play that short-term game, it'll come back to bite you. This is a really important thing to understand, because again, you want to lead these types of conversations. So the person who's asking these questions is in control of that conversation. So we're about halfway here. I want you to take a moment with your neighbors at your table here, and I just want you to look at your notepad, and I want you just to chat for a minute, maybe a minute and a half. What's been most valuable for you so far that we've talked about? Which one of these questions just sticks out to you as maybe something that you have an opportunity to start to play with? What part of a story that I shared has really connected with you, that's inspired you to maybe look at the work that you're doing a little bit differently, okay? A minute and a half here. What's been most valuable so far? Okay, over to you. How are the troublemakers doing over here?
Doing quite well.
We're doing good?
Thank you.
Good. Thanks. What time do you want me to wrap? One more minute. Okay, but one more minute here. One more minute. it going? Okay, let's come on back together here. So, we're about halfway of our time together here. I'd like to hear from a few of you. So, what has been most helpful so far? What's the most helpful over here at this table?
As a teacher, I really try to follow the Socratic method, and so you telling us that the person asking the questions is in control of the conversation, we really try to have dialogue in our classroom. And so obviously that dialogue we're trying to lead somewhere to learning. And so the way you framed that, I'd really never heard before.
I'm probably loud enough already for everybody
Yeah, pretty good. Why don't you do a really quick summary again, just for the folks over here on the left wall?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Of course. So something that's really helpful for us, I try to really follow the Socratic method when I teach in my classroom. And as a team, we try to do that. We ask a ton of questions. And I'd never really heard it framed before that the person asking the questions is in control of the conversation. It's not necessarily about control, but we are trying to get somewhere when we have dialogue in the classroom. And so framing it that way just really helps solidify what we're trying to do. Like you said at the beginning, that we're doing a pretty good job sometimes, but you're just making it better in this conversation. So we really appreciated that.
Love that. Love that. Everybody heard that over here? Okay. So again, this idea of control, like I said, the intention here, whether it's in a classroom environment, meeting with a student to help them see the opportunity to step into some learning with you. Control is all about helping somebody make a decision that's in their best interest. So in a learning environment, it could be helping somebody understand something in a way that would positively impact their ability to digest the material. Because we want it to be their answers, right? We want them to come to the realizations on their own. That's why that Socratic method is so powerful, right? They're the students, they're the learners. And it's amazing when you go in that process, isn't it true, how much you learn from them too in that process. Well done. Want to hear a couple more here. Thank you for running the mics, by the way. What's been most valuable and helpful so far? I'm really good at picking people, so. Yes, over here. We got a mic up, thank you so much. And you can just introduce yourself just to the group and then love to hear from you.
Sure. I'm Monica Crosby from a Safe Haven Foundation in Chicago. We're an interim housing facility, and we offer a lot of support services. This whole conversation that you've been having with us, to me, is just, I'm thinking of it as the art of compromise. Just kind of overarching, it's how you get somewhere with somebody, as opposed to being, at odds with someone. You get somewhere together with somebody.
Love that.
And me being the control freak that I am, I needed to learn all of this.
Yeah. So. Anybody else a recovering control freak like us? Yeah, just a few of you in the room? Weirdos, right? I love it, thank you. Maybe two more here. What's been most helpful so far? And again, you're looking for small things to get better at, not to totally transform you, right? If you get that, wonderful. The goal is getting better, though. What are one or two other examples? Yes, miss.
I like the can you help me understand, because then the answer no is not necessarily no.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that is a step forward into getting a solution to a problem, or at least creating pathways.
Yes, I love that. Love that. So can you help me understand? An alternative that I often see in conversations is this idea of, hey, tell me more. Right? Any of you think about the tonality of that? Tell me more. It kind of puts the other person a bit on defense, and it's like, shit, like, what did I not do good enough job explaining to you in the first place? Right? Another one here, show of hands if can you help me understand resonated with you, just as one that you wrote down. Another one that you want to write down right beside it that I find is really, really helpful is the question, what makes you say that? And again, tonality matters. What makes you say that versus what makes you say that? Whenever I'm in a pinch and I'm trying to elongate my curiosity, that's a question I always kind of keep in my back pocket. It buys me a little bit of time. What makes you say that? I'm curious. Can you unravel that a little bit more? So thank you so much. Maybe one or two others. What's been most helpful so far? Yes, over here. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you have one right there. We'll come right back to you. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Hi. I'm not sure if it's for you, but I like that for the subject line because I do a lot of emailing. So it's like sometimes people, even me looking at my own email, I see something or skip it over.
Right.
So I think trying to get them right away with the subject line is really
Excellent.
impressive.
Excellent. That's super. Thank you so much. Thank you. Of course, back over here. Thank you.
First and foremost, I like that you are a keynote speaker who curses. It's very important. Because you never see that at conferences. So it's a wonderful new addition. I like it.
It's the Canadian in me, right?
Yes.
Just wait till we drink a little bit of maple syrup, and then it gets really, really crazy.
So the thing that I took is especially from the beginning where you asked where you could have benefited from being more curious.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can apply to the classroom as well. And how can we make people more curious? So I did my dissertation on open-ended questioning. So I think that is one way to spark curiosity in the classroom.
Love that. Show of hands if you agree here. Classroom being a wonderful opportunity to be more intentional about this. This is great. Perfect. Perfect. Anybody else have a burning learning they want to share here before we keep going on? Yes, back here in the corner. Anybody else? Okay, we'll do one more back here. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, Jared Dean, College of DuPage.
Morning.
I wrote in all capital letters the statement, make a lack of understanding your fault. Because a lot of times when they misunderstand things, they put the blame on you, saying, well, you didn't explain this, instead of coming back and them owning accountability. I didn't understand it, particularly if it's an email or instructions that go to a large group and they're the only person who don't understand it. So
Right.
I believe in, that just empowered me to make it their fault.
Love it. Love it. Wonder if everybody caught that. That's great. Thank you. Okay, some really good learnings here. Really, really good learnings. And again, from my experience, because I'm a student just like you, I firmly believe if you want to grow your income and your impact in this world, there's one thing you need to be doubling down on. Being in more rooms like this. You want to grow your impact and your income? Double down on your personal and your professional development. You don't need to apply everything that's in your notebook. Pick a couple of those, and it was wonderful to hear so many that you've captured so far with the time that we've shared together. Let's keep rolling. So, as many of you know as educators and people building exciting programs, sometimes when you get to finish lines, it just means you're at a new starting line. Am I right? Long story short, after the weeks that had followed and meeting with Kate, we got the green light. Laurier had agreed to audit our program and to grant a graduate certificate for anybody who had completed this. We have partnered together with Laurier, with a community college called Conestoga where I live, and we have brought together 4 or 5 different marketing agencies who were providers in the community working with businesses like those who had reached out to us to express the challenge that they were facing. We went to our funding body, the province of Ontario, and we raised a significant amount of money to be able to pilot this learning approach and to solve this problem. So like I said, one finish line is just another starting line. For us, where we were now is, now that we started to pull together a lot of these ingredients and the right players to be in the room, we still had to fill a room with students. And our commitment to our funders was that we were going to put 100 students through this process over the course of 1 year. And that we were going to support 10 businesses directly with projects like this. And our hypothesis was that we could get close to 90 plus of these students employed within inside of 6 months after going through a program like this. Not only were they going to be graduating with a graduate certificate, but all those industry partners I had mentioned, Shopify, HubSpot, they were all providing, we worked with Google as well, industry certifications that these students could also take with them. So this is a very unique approach that we were taking to, again, like I said, a digital apprenticeship style of learning, at least in our community. So what we did next is the picture that you see here, we ended up calling it DISC, a Digital Innovation Skills Certificate. This is the Shopify office in Waterloo. And what we did was, over the course of 4 or 5 weeks, we had ran a recruitment campaign for our students, and it's amazing what tacos will do, right? You bring some tacos into a room, and like kids just start flooding in. So we had a couple hundred come into these sessions. And the whole goal of this was to use this as an opportunity to be able to not only introduce the program to them, talk about what the commitment looked like. We brought in the businesses to share the projects they'd be working on. We wanted them to know that we were talking about real live wires they were going to be interacting with. We brought in the coaches who were actively service providers and who was going to be their mentors and the people who were going to be working with them. And it gave them an opportunity to see if this was potentially the ticket, a pathway, a step that they could take to continue to advance their learning journey. And we had a mixed bag of students here. We had some current students that were in their 4th year that were really proactive and starting to think about life after school and this being that kind of last mile of learning. We had alumni that were in the room. We had students from colleges and even folks who were coming from high school directly and were actually considering trying to go direct into the workforce and saw this as maybe a meaningful learning opportunity. And more and more employers that we work with, they're not really looking all the time for certifications or diplomas. They're looking for great people who really care and are passionate about what they're doing. Again, context a little bit dependent there. And this was a great opportunity for us to actually talk to the students, to hear their reactions, to see what their thoughts were. And this gentleman right here, who, as I was actually going through some of the photos from these experiences in preparation for our time together, this gentleman right in the middle who's looking at us, his name is BC. And I was kind of surprised when I was going through my Google Drive looking at photos for this. I was like, how fitting that I have a couple pictures of this to be able to tell this story with you. BC, after this presentation, you can imagine this, right? Like a room filled with about 100 people. And after we had done the info session, we ran a couple workshops, like an opportunity for folks to be able to get to know each other, do some icebreakers, start to interact and kind of share their experience in each of these areas. Everybody was hustling and chatting and having a good time. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw BC sitting by himself. He was on the side of the room, and I could kind of tell it was almost like it reminded me of my little son, William, at a playground. Like looking at everybody play, and you've probably seen this before. It's like, should I go? Should I not? Are they going to like me? Are they not? And he was doing that awkward moment of like sitting there on his phone, kind of like checking in, looking up, looking distracted. But I could tell that he was alone. I could tell that he was unsure if he should be fitting here. And I remember going up to him, and he was sitting down there, and I went up and I actually sat down right beside him. And I'm sure you can imagine, for BC, this was pretty intimidating for him. The guy at the front of the room that's been talking for the last hour about all of this, he's coming to sit down right beside me. Like, what does he want? And I remember as I'm sitting down with him, and I'm checking in, like, hey, how are you doing? Are you enjoying the evening? Is everything going okay? What do you think about the program? I could tell he was really trying to figure out, should I trust you or not? And I think this is a very common experience that we have with people. They don't know if we're friend or foe up front. What are your intentions? For me, my intention in sitting down with BC in that moment was to help him know that he was absolutely deserving of being in that room and to make sure that he had all the support that he needed to be able to answer any questions that he had. And the moment where I was able to really strike a connection with him and to make it very clear that I was on his team and that he could open up and start to share his story with me was really focusing on cultivating relatability. And you do that by prefacing your statements with this phrase right here. I bet you're a bit like me. When I sat down with him and I could see he was kind of sheepishly engaging with me, I said, you know what, BC, I bet you're a little bit like me. You come to experiences like this and they're pretty overwhelming. You're trying to digest a whole bunch of information. It feels like a fire hose sometimes that's just hosing you down the whole time. You're trying to take notes. You're trying to meet new people. It's pretty exhausting to introduce yourself 17 damn times. All while trying to figure out in this moment, like, am I going to apply? Because at the end of all of this, I'm asking you to submit an application before you walk out of this door. So I bet you're a little bit like me that in situations like this, it can feel pretty overwhelming. Am I right? And that's where I could see him put his phone away. You know that's a sign when somebody's engaged, right? Puts their phone away and he's like, you're exactly right. And I'll be honest with you, I'm really embarrassed with my English. You see, BC had just moved to Canada about 6 months before. He had moved to Canada from Africa, and he was an international student who was trying to find his way. And all of a sudden, it started to make sense to me why you're not in the groups chit-chatting like everybody else. He's pretty reserved and self-conscious of that, right? So when you're trying to really build a connection with somebody really quickly, get on the same team, this is a wonderful phrase you can use because what it does is it helps you really quickly find common ground and establishes a path of least resistance. And it makes it easy for somebody to agree with you on something. I wasn't trying to say to him, hey, I bet you're like me and that you think that e-commerce and digital marketing is like the whole entire future. Like I wasn't talking to him about existential things that we had to agree on. I was trying to relate to him. Because you've had a situation like that, just like BC. Maybe you didn't travel from a whole other continent to set up your life in a new environment and trying to learn a new language to be able to fit in, but maybe you're like my son William, who is sitting on the side of a playground unsure whether or not you should step in. Maybe you're an attendant at a great conference like this, where this is your first time here and you're meeting people like Brian who have been here for 20 years. It's intimidating. Sometimes building that rapport and getting the same team, it's all about being able to reference back and think back to the simplicity of those moments and the things that I think we all have some common humanity around. Do I fit in? Do I deserve to be here? So I bet you're a little bit like me. It's a great phrase you can use in some of your conversations, especially when you're meeting with students who have that resistance, who are maybe wondering if they should open up to you. This is a great way to start that conversation. Now, throughout the next 5 or 10 minutes, as I was sitting down with BC, he started to open up to me, and he had shared that not only did he just move to Canada from Africa, not only was he still learning English, but he had one heck of an experience and a background in entrepreneurship back home. He loved photography. He was really, 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 really good at it. And he ran his own little business back home. He would be taking photos for small businesses, or weddings was a big thing that he happened to focus on as kind of like a primary outlet for his passion of photography. And as he started to share this with me, I started to learn a little bit more about all the neat experiences that we each have, but this was BC's story. And so I asked him, I said, so what do you think about this program? Like, do you think you want to enroll in it? Do you think this is perhaps something that you could see yourself leaning into? When I asked him that question, silence is sometimes very telling. I could see he's starting to think, and he goes, I don't think I have what it takes. When I'm speaking with people in this room, they've all worked before here in Canada. They've all used some of these tools before. I just don't. So I don't think I have what it takes. Show of hands if you've been in that situation before where you're looking at a student and you actually see the possibility and are more excited about their future than them. Like, can you show me a hand if that's with you here? I remember you had shared that with us when we were chatting a few days ago. Like sometimes as educators, we get so passionate and excited about the opportunity in front of somebody that they don't even see themselves. Here's the wrong thing to do in that moment. Try and convince BC that he should. Nah, you got what it takes. Don't worry about it. It'll be great. You'll make lots of new friends. Again, giving context. Remember that at the beginning of our time together? Don't worry, BC. It'll be wonderful. We're here with you the whole way. You should totally enroll. You try and provide somebody context. All it does is it creates uncertainty. He's like, yeah, right, Dave. You don't even know who I am. We've been talking for 7 minutes. You have no idea. Thanks, but the self-doubt just continues to breed itself, right? The right thing to do in that moment is to, instead of trying to provide assurance and certainty, you want to ask a very thoughtful question that's going to create a change in perspective, or at least open up a window for you to offer a different one. And this question is this: how certain are you? When I was asking him, you can apply, I could tell that he was pretty certain that he just didn't have what it took. But the best place and way to be able to change somebody's perspective is to challenge the confidence they have around how certain they are. So I asked him, I said, BC, how certain are you that your entrepreneurial experience back home might be the actual very thing that's going to allow you to be successful in this program. He's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, you've run your own business. You've been the client. How certain are you that all the experiences that you have, the challenge that you've gone through to up and root your life and to move over here hasn't actually equipped you with all the skills that you need to do this well? How certain are you that you're not actually qualified? How certain are you that you actually might have everything it takes to be able to do this well? You see, when we ask this question, how certain are you? What it does is it allows us to be able to respectfully challenge conviction. I'm a big believer, and my approach in life is I always want to lead with love. Every door I walk through, the most important door in my life is my home door. Whenever I'm about to turn a handle, I always ask myself one question before I step through. What would love do now? Sometimes when we're leading with love, it means that we have to challenge. It means we have to push a little bit. By asking a question, instead of providing certainty to BC, it's going to be all right, I can ask a question that continues the journey of helping me create his context, but helping him actually create his own understanding himself. It allows me to respectfully challenge it. And in doing that, it kind of zooms him out from like, do I apply this thing, yes or no, to this bigger picture of all the collective experiences that he's had. That's where you can all of a sudden start to, when you ask a question like that, insert a different point of view. So as I'm sitting down with BC here, and at this point in time, I think back to this, I don't even think the poor guy got a taco. Like, I think we were talking the whole time. Everybody else was eating, having fun. And we're sitting here one-on-one, and I said to him, so how are you feeling about this now? And he goes, I'm pretty nervous. How are you feeling about our conversation? Well, I think I could do this, but I don't really know if I should apply or not. The reality is a lot of times we find ourselves at forks in the road, don't we? You've been in this position before. Human nature. It's way easier for us to get fixated and worried about a potential loss than it is to fixate on a potential gain. We will typically, when it comes to decision-making, things that we do, we will gravitate towards the potential downside far more than we will connect with the upside, right? Always evaluating the risk. You see, what BC needed in this moment was obviously a little self-belief in himself, but he also needed some motivation. He needed a reason that was big enough, bigger than the fear of potentially not being accepted. Because there's two different pathways for BC here, right? Like one is I put in the application, you go through the process, there's a couple hundred students putting their feather in the cap, if you will, and then you hear no, and you got to deal with that. Or you go down the pathway and you do get into it, and it could be a transformative learning experience. But for him, which one does he think in his own mind is going to play out with a higher degree of probability? It's going to be worst case scenario. That's human nature. It's a negativity bias, right? Motivation. If you think about the word motivation, if we break it down, motive, a reason, ation, to do something. Motivation. He needed a reason to do something. A lot of times as leaders, it's our job to help cultivate clarity around what those reasons are for people. Sometimes they're in there, but like they're way in there. We gotta help dig them out a little bit. And so in this moment, when you're dealing with somebody who needs that motivation, and again, we don't want to just give it to them, we want to cultivate it in themselves. It has to be their motivation. There's a really thoughtful way you can do this that I want to teach you. Because there's two ways that we make a decision. There's two key ingredients: emotion and logic. I want you to write that down. Emotion and logic. That's how we make decisions. Here's a question for you. Which one comes first? Say it again, sorry? Emotion. That's right. Something has to feel right before you evaluate if it's actually right. If it doesn't feel right for you, if it doesn't feel good, you're not going to go through the process of evaluating and thinking it through more analytically, right? It has to feel right first. So for BC to be able to take a step in the direction that's in his best interest here, right now, what's his emotion as he's sitting at the crosshair? How would you describe it? With your partner next to you, just kind of say, what do you think the emotion is for BC right now? Nervous, yep. What else? What do you think BC's emotion would be here? Apprehension, very good. So what we need to do here is we need to change his emotion. You can do this by asking a really thoughtful question. How would it feel if? Here's the question I asked BC. He was obviously nervous, as per the pretty funny image here. He was sweating buckets. So I asked him in that moment, I said, BC, how would you feel if in 6 months from now, you had a real life experience with a company here in Canada, you had a graduate certificate, you had built new friends, your English had improved. How would you feel in 6 months if that happened? He's like, oh my gosh, like that's the dream I've had for like 3 years from now. Like if that happened now in 6 months, I would feel like this decision we made was the exact right thing. I'd be so proud of the progress that I've made. I'd be so excited to share that with my friends and family back home. I said, great, well, let me ask you this. How would you feel if in 6 months from now, your English didn't improve? And in 6 months from now, you still didn't have any work experience here. And then 6 months from now, you were still marinating in this question of, did you make the right decision? How would you feel if 6 months went on and you were still where you are today? Because I'd probably be ready to pack up my stuff and maybe head back home. I don't know. I'd be pretty disappointed in myself if I didn't make any progress there. You see, if the reason is big enough, anybody will do anything. Sometimes you have to help somebody understand what their reasons are. And so this question is so powerful. How would it feel if? What it really creates here is something called a future conditional thought. That's what's happening. That's why this question works so well. Instead of convincing him to overcome the apprehension that he has right now in this moment, I want to take him through time to a future moment. I want to bring him down the road, a future conditional thought. How do you think you're going to feel in this moment, when this happens, if this happens? Right? And when we do that, what's really cool is it starts to create tension. And this is one thing I've deeply learned over my career, is that tension is a really, 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 really healthy thing in conversations. Especially when you're helping somebody make a decision. We create tension here between where somebody is and where they want to be. If there's no tension there, they'll just stay where they are. And ultimately, by doing this and helping him think about the future and what would happen, how he would feel if he enrolled in this program and was able to get some of the success that we hoped had come from this learning journey, we were able to start to create a truth worth changing for. And what changing meant for him in that moment was to put his application in, to put his hand up and to say, I'm interested, to go through the interview process, and to put his own, the risk on the line of what it would mean of starting this application and seeing if this is something I could get accepted into. Make a long story short, or a medium story short, I guess, it's not that long. Shortly after our conversation, BC applied that night. We had about 350 applicants for this program. He was one of the 100 that got in. And not only did BC complete the course, he was top of his class. The client that he worked with here, Dana Short, an amazing entrepreneur up in Ontario in Canada, loved his work so much, she approached me in the last week of class asking if she could, on the day of wrapping things up, present him with a job opportunity right in front of everybody. Now, the image I shared with you earlier, tears, not sweat. Tears, not sweat at that point in the game. The very thing that we had talked about, how he would feel in that moment, BC made happen. But sometimes as educators, as leaders in your community who are working with different students from a variety of different circumstances, instead of giving them this conviction and trying to give them certainty that everything that you think they should go through is going to pay off for them, sometimes asking better questions so they feel that motivation themselves is exactly what they need. And do you know what's really, really neat? Is watching somebody realize that they are the ones who created their own outcome. He's the one who made the decision. He's the one who's applied. He's the one who did the work. He's the one who got the job. I think that's why we're all in this room and do the work that we do. Fast forward a little bit. This is BC here today. I reached out to him not too long ago. I said, BC, if it's okay with you, I'd like to share some of your amazing story here. They do have a recent picture of you and your family. And this is with him and his little one. They started their family in Canada. He worked with Dana now for about 2 years. And what's really neat is he decided to go back into his passion for entrepreneurship. Him and his wife created an African food grocery store in Kitchener-Waterloo, where I live. A thriving business right now. And he also stepped back into becoming a photographer again, running his own business. Dana is now a client of his. How cool is that, right? So I hope this is helpful for you. You don't mind me sharing real stories and experiences that I've been through, and had a few pit stops along the way to share with you why this is so important and how you can ask some better questions in these types of moments. Because a lot of times whether it's working with great educators like you, or business leaders, team leaders, a lot of times a presenting challenge that somebody will come to me with is, can you teach me how I can convince people to do something? Like, how do I convince somebody? How do I influence them? How do I get them to take a specific action? And that action will look different for everybody. But the reality is if you're coming to me to learn how to help somebody take an action that you think they should take, the reality is I'm going to take you way upstream on this. Because the reality is that actions come from creating opportunities for somebody to take an action, and opportunities, well, they come from relationships, don't they? And relationships come from really, really great, meaningful conversations. And how do you have a great conversation? Really good questions. That's why we spent all of our time this morning talking about questions, exactly what to ask in these critical moments. I want to tie this all together for you for a little image that you can kind of sketch into your notebook here. A little triangle, if you will. So I talked earlier about the importance of creating context, not giving it, right? That's ground zero here. Curiosity fuels great conversations. Curiosity fuels great conversations. When you start and lead conversations with curiosity, and again, when is the worst time to think about what you're trying to say? When you're saying it, exactly. So if you think ahead of time what those questions are, you can show up in the conversations you have in front of you later this week or next week and bring more curiosity to those. And when you do that, you're going to cultivate clarity around what their context is. You're going to create that context. When somebody feels like you understand their context, and here's the truth, most people actually don't even really know what their context is until people ask them. You ever been in a conversation like that before? Somebody great, where it's like, gosh, like you really helped me get clear on what I thought I needed through that process. When you have that, that's where empathy can really start to show up. If you want to influence somebody to take an action, the reality is you have to show them that you know them. And if you don't understand what their context is, it's pretty tough to do that. When you have that level of empathy, my friends, that's where all of a sudden you can start to build and lean on the relatability that starts to show up in this relationship. And boy, when you have relatability and somebody knows that they can trust you and that you're here to help them make a decision that's in their best interest because you've taken the time to do the work and ask the questions, I'm sorry, but finding the courage to take action just happens. It's a natural outcome of that. When you have that relatability and that trust, the courage for you to ask somebody to take an action, or just like BC, finding the courage inside of yourself to go and take action, that's a natural outcome if you spend the time and you do the work and you ask the questions. That's conversational excellence. And so I hope from our time that we've spent together this morning, you've been able to take away 6 or 7 very specific questions or phrases, things that you can ask. This is something that I believe to be true. Change your words, you can change your world. But you know what? I was thinking of this just this morning as I was having a nice little omelet over at the embassy. Weren't those omelets good? Did anybody else have one, by the way? Those were good. As I was walking over under the underpass, I was thinking, this group of people here, you're not really interested in changing your world. From the people that I've met and who I've spent my time with, I don't see that in you. I think you see that as an outcome. But by changing your words, you're going to change the world of the businesses that you're supporting in your community. And more importantly, you're going to change the world of the students who are leaning into these learning experiences that you're creating together across this state. I think that's why you do what you do. And so if it's not for yourself, do it for them. Change your words and change your students' world as a result of that. It's been a real pleasure spending the morning with you here today. Like I said, my name's Dave, and I'm going to be hanging out with you for the morning. So I think we're at a spot now, depending on time, where we can do some Q&A. How are we doing for time, Amy? Where are we at? We need a wrap. Great. If you have any questions, my email's right there. And I'm going to be around for the morning, okay? Thank you so much, everybody. That was wonderful.
Wow, I heard a giant sigh. So if you have a couple questions, we do have time for, we'll say 2. Does anybody have a question for Dave? Aaron and Tara are running mics. While you're thinking about that, I have a couple housekeeping items I need to walk through with you. So first, let's join me again in thanking Dave for his time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are very excited to have you all here with us for the Forum for Excellence. A couple little housekeeping items. If you need a certificate, there will be individuals at the back of the room. All of the SIPDC team and the ICSPS team are here to check you in. As you go through sessions, if you need checked in, you'll see people in the back of the room for that, and then there's also signs. Your name tag has a QR code on it, so they'll be able to scan you and check you in if you want to get a certificate. I want you to spend some time with our sponsors. They're lining the hallways out here. So between now and our next breakout session, which starts at 10:50, is time to spend with the sponsor. So please check them out, because they're also not only here to have all the fun freebies at their booths, but also they sponsor our reception this evening. 2 receptions tonight. So if you're staying at this hotel and you've checked in already, or if you haven't, your room key will get you drinks tonight at the bar. So 5 to 6:30 is the reception at the hotel. There'll be snacks, there'll be drinks. There will also be a live band. We have some students who are joining us from ICC, and they're going to be playing some music while we enjoy some drinks. Then at 6:30, we're going to come back into this room tonight and play trivia. If you don't have a team, or if you don't want to play, that's okay. Come, eat the food, socialize, have a great time. If you're interested in having a team, that's all on the app. You can go on there and check in. Or if you're not into the app thing, I know there's a couple people who are like, I want my paper copy. Just show up. We'll put you in a place. You'll have a great time. I want to thank ICCB for sponsoring this conference. Brian said that we've been doing this for 21 years, and we have. It's been an amazing conference, so thank you to ICCB. I also want to let you know that everything is live on Whova, so if you have any questions with Whova, we have Amber Vicarcia. I'm going to mispronounce her name. Amber is out. She's got a Whova tiara, and so if you have any questions with Whova, you can ask her. Also, any of us that are supporting the conference can also answer easy questions, but Amber is our expert. Couple things. If you want to listen to, bear with me for 30 more seconds. If you want to listen to a session and you're here, and maybe you're at a different hotel, we have the Lydia room, which is across the way and up the stairs. The Lydia room is available for listening to virtual sessions. So if there's a virtual session that we're not doing live and you want to hear that, we have a space for you. And then with that, any last questions for Dave?
Yes.
Oh, we do.
We have a virtual question for Dave. Can you share any strategies for having effective conversations with overtly aggressive or negative people?
Everyone's saying that.
Yeah, good question. Anybody know anybody like that? No? Few of you? Few of you? Let's see. How do you have conversations with people who are overtly aggressive? I personally don't choose to have those conversations. I don't. I choose to not have those conversations. I think it is a disservice to our business community and the people that we work with if we enable that to happen. So if I was to give you a question that you could ask in that moment, it might be something along the lines of, hey, when would be a good time for us to have this conversation? When you aren't as emotional and as upset. Because again, if you think about it, there's two ways you can take that. One is like, you're being way too aggressive and assertive with me right now, and you're telling them what's wrong with going on. And what will that create? A lot more of this. I don't know about you, anybody I've spoken to who is overtly aggressive, what that tells me, and I want you to listen to this. On your piece of paper, this will be like a 2-minute thing, I promise, Amy. On your piece of paper, I want you to write a scale 0 to 10, okay? 0 to 10. And right in the middle, 5, right down the middle. I'm always aware of my own emotional regulation. I'm aware of the people that I'm working with. Anytime, and I often use a number, a simple scale like this. If I'm evaluating somebody in a conversation, anytime I feel like they have good executive function, they're controlling their emotions, on that scale of like 0 to 10, you're under 5 as far as the intensity of your emotion. You're in the front seat, you're driving the car. But sometimes, and I do this too, so do you, we go north of 5. And when you're north of 5, all of a sudden you're not in the driver's seat anymore. You're sometimes in the back seat or the trunk, depending where you are. And what I mean here is instead of it being you driving the vehicle, it's almost like a scared animal comes out. So one thing I always keep top of mind is I don't take that personally if somebody is overtly aggressive. It means that they're disconnected for some reason. Something's going on in their life where their emotional regulation has tipped them over that 5. So my goal in that moment is to actually wait until they are under 5, and my goal is how do I get you closer to 0? So it might be, hey, when would be a good time to be able to have this conversation when this isn't as heated? Or, just like we talked about today, hey, it seems like you're really frustrated with me right now. Can you help me understand what's going on? I want to get on the same page with you. Get on the same page with somebody. Not that it's okay what they're doing, but the reality is if you had the same DNA and all the same experiences as they did, you would be pissed off and frustrated in that moment too. Not saying it's right. But if you want to really get somebody under 5, back in the front seat, you know what's pretty rare right now is people who give a shit and want to really understand what's going on. Hey, it seems like you're really upset right now. Can you help me understand what's going on? Because it seems like that might be getting in the way of us having a really great conversation. That's how I would answer the question. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we all good to wrap there? Any other questions? Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Look forward to seeing you around.
And the vendors are open out front, so please see the vendors. We will start at 10:50 with breakouts, and we do ask that everybody vacate this room. We'll need to flip the room for lunch. Thank you.